Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is December 9th. On this day in 1988, 34-year-old Joan Yarbrough Bernal was supposed to be kicking off a holiday road trip from Joliet, Illinois to Texas with her husband and children. Instead, she vanished. Her husband, Gilbert Bernal, has always maintained that she left voluntarily. But investigators and Joan's children believe that something much darker happened before that trip even began. Now, more than 3 decades later, Joan's body has never been found. But her case continues to raise questions, especially as cold case detectives and the team from the show Cold Justice take another look. Today, we're talking about the disappearance of Joan Bernal. Let's get started. Joan Yarbrough Bernal grew up in Hickory Hills, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. After graduating from Amos Alonzo Stagg High School in 1972, she settled into life in Will County, eventually becoming a bus driver for the Joliet Mass Transit District. She lived on Zarley Road with her blended family, 2 kids from a previous marriage, 3 stepchildren, and 1 young daughter she shared with her second husband, Gilbert Bernal. Joan was known as a hands-on mother, and those close to her described her as gentle, nurturing, and deeply devoted to her kids. But behind closed doors, Joan's life was far from calm. According to records later reviewed by investigators in the TV show Cold Justice, Joan had sought shelter multiple times due to domestic violence. Notes from those days described a repeated pattern: abuse followed by promises and apologies from Gil, then Joan returning home. That Friday, December 9th, Joan and Gil were supposed to be heading south to Edinburgh, Texas to visit Gil's family. They planned to take all of the children with them, including Joan's older kids from her previous marriage. But first, they had to pick them up from their father, Joan's ex-husband, Larry. According to investigators, Larry wouldn't allow the children to leave the state. On the drive back home, Gil and Joan reportedly argued. When they arrived at their house, Joan and Gil went inside while the children stayed in the car. Shortly after, Gil returned and took his 3 children from a previous relationship to their biological mother's home. What happened during that brief period inside the house remains the center of this mystery. Years later, Gil's son, Gilbert Jr., would recall something that haunted him. He was a teenager at the time, and he remembered approaching the house and looking through the window. He later told authorities that he saw his father violently assaulting Joan. Quote, "I looked through the window and I saw my dad jerk Joan's head, grab Joan by the neck and jerk back and went forward, and that was it. Then he dragged her through the living room." End quote. But according to Gil's version of events, that never happened. His story has remained largely unchanged since 1988. He claims that after dropping off his kids and repairing a headlight at work, he and Joan left the next morning with their young daughter, Sarita. Then, somewhere near McAllister, Oklahoma, he says that Joan changed her mind. She was upset over the custody dispute with her ex-husband, so she asked to be dropped off so she could return to Illinois, get her older children, and fly down to Texas later. According to Gil, he left her at a bus station with about $1,500 in cash. That, he says, was the last time he saw her. But police have never found any proof of his bus stop story. There's no record of Joan ever buying a ticket, boarding a bus, or arriving back in Illinois. She never contacted her children or family again, and she hasn't been seen since. Investigators later came to believe that she never made it out of Joliet. By 1993, 5 years had passed and Joan's case remained open. That year, Gil's son came forward with his story, the one about seeing Joan assaulted through a window. Around the same time, other allegations of abuse surfaced. Joan's older children spoke about living in fear. One son said that he once saw Gil hold a knife to his mother's throat. An ex-wife and an ex-girlfriend of Gil's described similar abuse patterns, including being dragged by their hair and violently threatened. These weren't just family rumors, they were documented in police reports and interviews. While none of it was a smoking gun, Will County prosecutors believed that the pattern was clear enough. In 1993, they charged Gil Bernal with Joan's murder, but the case never went to trial. When a new state's attorney took office in 1994, Gil's defense team brought forward 4 witnesses who claimed to have seen Joan alive after December 1988. Faced with a lack of physical evidence and no body, prosecutors dropped the charges. Later, some of those witnesses reportedly recanted, but the damage to the case had already been done. Joan's remains were not found, and her DNA was submitted to national databases, but no matches have turned up. Gil eventually moved out of state and lived freely, as he was presumed innocent under the law. Then, in 2024, nearly 36 years after Joan vanished, the case got a fresh look. The team from the Oxygen show Cold Justice joined Will County detectives to re-examine the file. A friend of Gil's, Ray O'Gorman, had previously told police that Gil had once discussed how to dispose of a body using antifreeze, oil, and a 55-gallon drum. He had reportedly given Gil 2 barrels, but investigators only ever found 1. Using ground-penetrating radar, the Cold Justice team searched Gil's old property for signs of a buried container. While they didn't locate Joan's remains, the work put new public pressure on the case. Gil, now in his 80s, agreed to speak with investigators on camera. He admitted that he used to, quote, bang her head when angry, but he denied killing Joan. He maintained his long-standing story that she got out of the car in Oklahoma and never came back. For her children, especially Sarita, who was just a toddler at the time, the pain of not knowing has never faded. Sarita has said that she doesn't know her mother's voice or scent, just the photo that's been passed around for decades. As of December 9th, 2025, Joan Bernal has been missing for 37 years. Her case is still open. No one has ever been convicted in connection with her disappearance. But despite this, the hope for answers always remains. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Joan's case compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!